Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump, even though I have a mustache. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we are back following the Eagles' dominance over the New York Giants, 28-3. Yesterday, this was an unmitigated disaster. And other than it being a beautiful day outside, truly a beautiful late October day, nothing good came of this game. Absolutely nothing good came of this game. And we're here to talk about it. So, Cranky, why don't you get us started? How was yesterday?
Saturday night was great, Grump. Florida beat Kentucky. I enjoyed that. I didn't enjoy my 2.5 hours sleep and getting up at 4:30 to fly halfway across the country to see that heaping pile of garbage. That's for sure. The weather was nice. It was nice to see you and see Ron and Bruce from Section 132. Fart to Gary.
That brings us to our first fart.
Fart to Gary. Where were you, buddy? You weren't there in Section 124, and Eagle fans sat in your seat. So when we see you, you owe us a pretzel.
There you go.
Yeah.
Each.
But each, for sure. No, it's just, I
one pretzel for each ticket sold.
That sounds good. And you can, let's do that. It's just very deflating, Grump. When you go to college games, you go to NFL games, and it's a little different atmosphere. I get it. But when the Giants are playing their biggest rival, arguably, I mean, you can say Dallas, maybe some people might say Washington, but the Eagles are kind of our biggest rival, the team we hate the most. And to have an atmosphere going in like that was as stale as some of the pretzels we eat at MetLife, and just, the performative booing of Saquon by a lot of people, burning jerseys in the parking lot and all that stuff. It's just like you're just trying to get clicks and you're just trying to get views. And I just, the everything that's all about being a Giant football game has been eroded at this point. That team came in there and took us to the woodshed, on the field, in the stands, energy, all of that stuff. And we just kind of, that's it. And it's really embarrassing that we're at this point now. And, I said that this is a whole franchise that's rotted out. And I really feel that. I mean, we're sitting in a stadium that has absolutely no atmosphere. Listening to a PA announcer trying to tell us to get hyped up. If you're listening to like one of those transistor radios, can barely hear what the hell they're saying. We're reduced to throwing T-shirts in the crowd. It's 40% Eagle fans. The Giant fans are just sitting there on their hands. I understand this is a bad product, but Jesus Christ, we're playing one of our rivals. Show a little passion or anything. It was dead from the second we got there. The team made us feel even more dead inside. And I know we'll talk about Dable in his press conference, and we don't really take much of what he says, but he said he brought in Drew Lock to provide a spark. Well, guess what? You know what the spark was? Grump and I got up and left.
Yeah.
That was the spark that was provided. And, we're going to talk about what we need to do with this team and the hopes of the future and stuff. But right now, we're just a rotted out franchise, and it's very sad.
So I will say a couple of things here, and I'm not going to negate anything you said. It's all true. The entire atmosphere from MetLife Stadium was as flat as a free medium Pepsi. And that includes Eagles fans. We've been to many Giants-Eagles games, and we have heard the spelling bee in the crowd far louder than we heard yesterday. I mean, I'm hardly going to lie to your face and tell you that there weren't Eagles fans there that were chanting and screaming, and we're going to get into the game, so I don't want to get too particular right now, but early on in this game was absolutely dreadful from both teams. And I think at the end of this year, we're going to look back at two very bad teams. I don't think that anything that happened this game changes my view of the Philadelphia Eagles. I had predicted that this might be a quote-unquote get-right game for them, where all is sunshine and rainbows in Philadelphia. And then, in 2 weeks, they'll be back where they were. I still don't think this is a good Eagles team. I still think Jalen Hurts did not have a good game, in my opinion. We were watching the stands multiple times asking which team Daniel Jones is supposedly playing for. The Eagles didn't play a great game, and I think Eagles fans know that their team stinks because this was not one of those things where they were super loud right from the get-go and Giants fans were flat. The entire atmosphere of that stadium was flat, flat, flat.
And you know the worst thing about that was? Eagle fans know their team isn't very good, but they also know they're eons better than us. And they go in there, and they went in there, expecting the curb stomping so much that they weren't even that excited to do it. Yeah. That really, 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 the biggest difference with the Eagles and the Giants as two bad teams is one team has the potential for explosive big plays and the other team does not. I mean, again, it's kind of like asking Mrs. Lincoln how the play was, but take away the 2 Barkley runs, the big 4th down play. What did they really do? Not much of anything.
So let's get into the Giants offense first instead of the Eagles offense. We'll get to that later. But right off the bat, I'm going to give a fart, and it's to the entire offense. Watching this, I don't think a single part of the offense operated well at any point in the game. We couldn't pass block. We couldn't run block. We couldn't throw the ball downfield. We couldn't throw the ball accurately. We couldn't catch the ball. We couldn't do anything. Nothing on offense performed even remotely close to good or acceptable. Nothing was acceptable in this game. I guess did they maybe we had 0 turnovers is the only acceptable thing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And that is the type of performance. Remember, it was 72 and bright, crystal clear sky. These were dome conditions. This is not, there was a heavy wind or it was rainy or whatever. It was just bad. It looked like a team that couldn't do anything because they were afraid of the elements right now. And that's bad.
Well, afraid is an apropos word because I didn't mean to get into this immediately, but I'm going to give another fart. The only other fart I'm going to give is going to Brian Daboll, and it's for a very specific thing. I don't necessarily disagree with benching Daniel Jones at the time in which he did or anything like that. Kicking the field goal on 3rd down when you have 9 seconds left in the half. I don't know if some people were just being sarcastic when they were like, oh, well, I mean, have you seen this offense? Or if they're being serious. But that's inexcusable. To me, maybe I'm stupid, right? Like, I'm willing to accept that maybe there's something here that I am not thinking of. But from where they were on the field, in the red zone, are you telling me that it will take more than 9 seconds to just throw something in the end zone? I mean, if you throw a fade to Malik Neighbors or Darius Slayton or Theo Johnson or anything, just something towards the sideline where the only other outcome other than a completion for a touchdown is throwing it out of bounds. And
9 seconds. 9 seconds. Not 3. 9.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can run that play. And, there's a couple of other situations. Maybe you don't get a touchdown. Maybe you get a pass interference. And maybe now you have 4 seconds on 1st down from the 1-yard line. And maybe you go into the half with a touchdown then. Maybe you catch the ball for a touchdown. Maybe it goes incomplete and it's 4th and 14 with 3 seconds left for you to kick a field goal. But I do not understand not running even just a simple, even if it's telegraphed and the whole world knows you're running fade patterns. This is why you get a big guy like Theo Johnson. This is why you get an alpha wide receiver like Malik Neighbors to win when everyone knows what you're doing anyway. And you don't even try. That is guaranteeing that you get the 3 points when you could have gotten 7.
Well, what does 3 points even get you? I mean, this is a team that is offensively challenged to score to begin with. Kicking a field goal means you still need 2 touchdowns. How many times are we going to be in the super red zone like that during this game? I don't think we were even close before that or since that. And I don't want to hear
we would have kicked another field goal.
Right, because I don't want to hear the term, well, you got to get points there.
Right.
You got to get points, but points that actually mean something. 3 points is still 11.
that sentence doesn't make any sense.
Of course it doesn't.
With 9 seconds left and on third down, you are almost guaranteed points. You are guaranteed a field goal attempt. You're not guaranteed, but you have a very high likelihood you should be playing for 2 plays with 9 seconds
left.
But
and let's say the absolute worst case nightmare scenario happens. We try to run a play and it takes 10 seconds, or we fumble and they don't get the ball back. Trying that play gives you a better chance to win.
Right.
3 points doesn't do anything but says, well, you didn't get shut out again. You know, you got to get points there just is sounding like a pussy and sounding like you're afraid of what people will think about you. We're down 14. We're still in the game. It's 14. A touchdown there is 7.
I think this is such an egregiously bad decision. I actually think this is worse than sneaking with Jake Fromm. And it's for the same reason. They're both pussy play calls. But sneaking with Jake Fromm happened at the end of the season with a third-string quarterback that actually can't throw any pass. They were backed up in their own zone. It was early in the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the season was over at that point.
Well, I defended that from day one, so I'm going to take.
I understand, but it's fine if you don't like it. I understand you play to win the game, and that is not playing to win the game. That's a perfectly valid argument. You know, I don't really care that much about it. I don't really think that it sealed my decision on Joe Judge. That's irrelevant. In this scenario, this is a points scenario early enough in the game, early enough in the season. I mean, I know you have Andrew Thomas is out for the year, but Jesus Christ, the first game without him and you're already making concessions. I mean, this is not playing to fucking win. This is playing with a vagina. I cannot defend this. This is worse to me than what Joe Judge did. And I don't think
especially off the heels of last week where it was, fourth down Dable. How many times you go for fourth down last week?
Yeah, really.
No, so all of a sudden now we're super aggressive then, and all of a sudden now when we're knocking on heaven's door, we're not gonna, and this was one of those fork in the road parts of the game. We go into halftime down 14-7. They get the ball back, completely different. A lifeless dead stadium is excited all of a sudden.
The third quarter forcing a 3-and-out, a very quick 3-and-out against them too. So now all of a sudden, think about that vibe in the stadium. It really can change. And going at 14-3, I mean, people were booing, and they should have been. They're booing you getting points. And I know that the stands doesn't fucking know anything anyway, and the stands cheers when it says offense, please quiet at work, or quiet, please offense at work, or whatever, and they boo everything anyway. But I mean, it says something when you're getting points and your entire fan base is booing. This is not how you play football. It's not how you coach football. It's not being smart. This is outsmarting yourself. It's
not playing to win.
It's not sliding at the one like Devin Single or kneeling instead of trying an extra point attempt. You know what I mean? This is not that level of smart. This is outsmarting yourself.
Yeah, agreed.
Back to the entire offense in general. I know everyone is probably ready to hang Josh Ezeudu. I didn't think he played any worse than anybody else on the offensive line, save maybe John Runyon. John Michael Schmitz and Greg Van Roten had some pretty ugly stuff. I actually saw Josh Ezeudu and John Runyon execute a switch very, very well. Jermaine Illuminator had probably his worst game as a New York Giant, got beat multiple times. There were like 8 sacks of Daniel Jones alone in this game, I think. It was bad. It was a very bad offensive line performance.
It just felt like, the end of the 23 season or the 2021 season or the 2020 season where we have quarterbacks running for their lives. And every time Daniel Jones got hit, I sounded like Tom Brady doing announcing, like making audible noises and groans like, oh no, thinking, is he going to get up this time? Is he going to get up that time?
Speaking of DJ, he was unable to push the ball downfield with any sort of accuracy either. I don't know what our longest play was, but it wasn't very much. He missed Darius Slayton on one point, wide open. He's not playing well. Again, in the context of everybody else, I think he was right on par, which was everyone was unacceptable. I don't think the DJ was. He's going to be the target, and that's fine. I'm not going to change that, even if I try. But I think he was right in line with everybody in being unsatisfactory. I don't think he was the reason that the offense didn't do anything, but also had the rest of the offense done their job, DJ didn't do anything that would have won them the game. So he was right on par with everyone in sucking.
We have to grade him on a bit of a sliding scale, not what we want Daniel Jones to do, but what he can do. You know, we know he can't throw downfield. We know that he's inaccurate now. We know all these things, but what the offense is asking him to do, he was not very good at yesterday, and that's why he gets, the fart from us. He just, we've simplified it. We've tried to create an offense to maximize what he can't do, and he couldn't even do that. It's not alone. He's not the signal only reason of it, but from what he can control was not very good.
We've already talked about wide receiver drops. That's got to stop happening. We have a drops problem on this team, I think.
Oh, it's been all year. It's been all year.
Theo Johnson with the offensive pass interference in the end zone. I guess my only gripe with that is that it's not that it's not a penalty. It's that I see worse OPIs all the time. I think we might have seen a worse OPI in this game from A.J. Brown. But it's just the point in which that happens. Theo Johnson has not really had his moment yet as a New York Giant. I do think that he is someone that is going to develop here, and he has a lot of potential. I still like the pick, but they are really cramming Theo Johnson into this offense, and I do not see him as ready right now. He's just not playing well.
And we also had another illegal man downfield today or yesterday.
We did, and it was on Jermaine Illuminer. But it wasn't nearly as impactful as last week when Andrew Thomas did it. But yeah, that as well. So it's like we're not even running the offense properly. Like, you know what I mean? Like, everyone is at fault. It's a sloppy, disorganized mess. And God damn it, this is what I said in training camp that pissed people off. The one training camp practice I went to, I said the entire offense looks jumbled and sloppy right now. And they have their moments when things click. They're very rhythm oriented, and you can see that. But when it's not working, my God, dude, it's like a tractor trailer with all of the wheels coming off.
But now we're 7 weeks into the season. I mean, that should be taken care of at this point.
Let's get into that, because I actually think that the reason it looks worse week after week is because of something that Brian Daboll said in his presser, right? He was asked, I think, about putting in Drew Lock and wanting to create a spark and whatever, and then he just sort of went on a whole thing about the offense and what's not going well. And he said, every single week we focus on three things: third down, red zone, and explosive plays, right? And I agree with that, and those are the three areas that they are the worst at. But following that one sentence, he went on like a 3-minute answer only talking about explosive plays, right? He harped exclusively on their inability to generate any explosive plays. I think he said that the longest play of the game was maybe 14 yards. And this is where I think this offense struggles week after week after week, is the inability to push the ball downfield is killing everything else that they are able to do. When defenses know that the threat of going deep is almost non-existent, then it kills the underneath game. It kills the run game. So even if you run block well, you're only going to get 3 to 4 yards maximum if everybody does their job correctly, because everyone's already crashing down. You can see all the time with these short plays, these little hitch routes, there's nothing wrong with the play call. But, Wan'Dale Robinson gets the ball in his hand and is immediately getting smacked. He can't hold on to the ball. And the reason that's happening is because everyone is playing downhill. There is not enough space between the coverage and the players trying to run underneath routes. All that stuff is super crammed. The entire offense is condensed to within 10 yards because that's where the defenders are playing, because that's where they can play. There's no threat that is forcing them to play 15 yards off or 20 yards off. There's nothing there. They're perfectly happy leaving a safety or two safeties back there and letting everyone play forward. And so,
and where are those safeties? Those safeties aren't even that far back. If you just look at, we said it from the very first series. Like, look at these guys; they're all up already.
Mm-hmm. And I think that this comes to the reason it's worse week after week is that it's just on tape week after week. On tape week after week, this is the offense that we generate. And so it just compounds itself. Defenses, Brian Daboll tries to find a new way to keep that kind of offense moving, and defenses next week find a new way to stop that. And, there's 17 games. You're not going to find 17 ways to run that offense with Daniel Jones as quarterback, with no depth at the offensive line, with no Andrew Thomas. It's not going to happen.
Well, that's the $1 million question. That's really, where is this franchise going forward? Is the reason why this is on tape every week, is it because Brian Daboll and the coaching staff know this is who we have to work with, and we have to modify our scheme to do what our guys do best? Or is that Brian Daboll? I'm willing to bet that this is the hand I'm dealt with. This is my quarterback. I have to adapt to whatever I think could be successful for them, which has a heavy price to pay that really handcuffs what we can and can't do. I don't think this is the result of a stubborn coach that says, this is my system. And that's a decision that's got to be made, because, if it's determined by, Joe Shane and Mara and whoever else, that, well, I don't think it really matters who the quarterback is. There's going to be a changing of the guard in the coaching, but I don't think that's the case.
So there's numbers that back this up. I mean, look at any chart that shows tendency to throw to first read. Look at any, yards per attempt chart, and you'll see Josh Allen and Daniel Jones on opposite ends of those spectrums. I don't think that that's strictly because Josh Allen is just able to do whatever. I think that's the offense that Brian Daboll would run. He does not want his quarterback staring down his first read. He doesn't want things telegraphed. He doesn't want to play the short game. Brian Daboll, he just spent like 5 minutes explaining how important explosive plays are.
Yeah.
He knows. You know what I mean? Like, he knows. And in my eyes, he says all the right thing. He says all the, I guess, politically correct, but I'll say it like this: the accepted coach speak for what's going on. Daniel Jones was benched because I thought maybe we could use a spark. But really,
let me jump into that one.
Wait. I have literally one more sentence here.
Go ahead.
Harping on the explosive plays. You can only call explosive plays. Players have to execute. By saying that they failed to run explosive plays, that's his way of actually blaming DJ without blaming DJ. That's what my thought process is. So you were saying. You're
absolutely right, and you're leading exactly what I wanted to say, is that coaches have to be very careful, right? Especially when you're on losing teams, for two reasons. One, you don't want to say anything to get yourself in trouble, with the league. Like, you can't say, I'm taking out Daniel Jones because, let's face it, we don't want this guy. This game is over. We don't want him getting hurt. You can't say that. You'll get in trouble by the league for saying that, because you're, quote unquote, damaging integrity of the game. But leading what your point was, you can't say those things with a locker room that could potentially be divided because one side of the ball is doing relatively what they should be doing and one side is not, and the losses are piling on and piling on and piling on. You can say things in code, which is exactly what he did, but you can't say it. So a lot of it is, again, I don't care what coaches say in press conferences. I rarely listen to them. But, if we're going to dissect what he says, he is a coach that is respected, has earned his respect, and will make us up in this league, as opposed to other coaches who say the things, that call out their players. Antonio Pierce saying some guys are making business decisions. That's calling out your players directly, and It's the fastest way to lose a locker room that a year ago got you the job. The only reason a guy like him is the coach is because the players lobbied for him. And if you throw them under the bus like that, they're gone. Saying what he says in code is, if you're listening to what he says, you know what he's saying.
I am ready to flip to the defense.
Let's flip to the defense. I don't want to talk about the offense ever again.
Yeah. I actually thought, overall by the end of this game, the defense did a pretty poor job. Saquon Barkley ran all over this team. But I think that for a while, this defense did a pretty good job of containing what I still perceive to be a pretty bad offense. I don't mean roster-wise. I just mean the product they're putting on the field. Considering they don't have Thibodeau, they are forced to put a pass rush specialist at edge to start with Azeez Ojulari, who has some serious run game warts. When you consider that, I think that for a while, this was going very well. And you got 2 more sacks for Dexter Lawrence. Azeez Ojulari got another. I think the game sort of fell apart once it was clear the offense wasn't doing anything. We were sitting there. The Eagles ended up scoring their first touchdown on a bomb, but that was a 4th down conversion. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And they were at midfield. It's not like that was, that was a weird, not weird, but a ballsy 4th down decision right there to go for that.
We thought it was ballsy even went for 4th down period, remember?
Yeah. I mean, up until that point and beyond that point, I want to say for the entire first quarter and half of the second, they had no 3rd down conversions. The Philadelphia Eagles. And we remarked on that at the time. The one conversion they had was the 4th down for a touchdown. And I'm going to give Shane Bowen an honorable mention fart. I'm not going to give him the whole fart because I actually think, considering, this is a defense. We knew this going into it. They don't have a solid cornerback too. They're trying to figure shit out. They're in a whole new scheme. They are very, very razor thin at edge, and they already have a guy hurt. Considering all of that and the roster they're up against, they did an okay job. They need the offensive side of the ball to score points and keep them in the game in order to play their defense. They cannot play from behind, and what happened in the second half is what happens when they do. So, but what I will give him an honorable mention fart for is that 4th down play call. Leaving Nick McLeod one-on-one with A.J. Brown is not a fireable offense, but this is now a pattern of strange, one really bad play. Last week against the Bengals, letting Joe Burrow run for 50 yards for a touchdown because the entire right side of the field is uncovered, and you left Azeez Ojulari to try and contain him. All it takes is that one missed tackle, and you have a guy who is mobile enough, but not Lamar Jackson out there outrunning the defense. He didn't have to outrun the defense because nobody was on that side of the field. You know what I mean? I think to me was that same kind of shitty setup. Go ahead.
Your reasoning why it was an honorable fart is to me why it's not a fart. I just think it's you're asking this defense to basically pitch a shutout, basically to be perfect. And, this is a league where, everything favors the offense. You're not going to be perfect, and these big plays are going to happen. I mean, if it's, consistent, if it's, a chronic problem with these guys, it's not chronic. It's unfortunate at the worst times. So I'm not going to give kudos for a fuck up like that, but I can't give a fart because of it, because with a real NFL football team, that's an unfortunate play, and we move on. It's so magnified because it's almost impossible for this team to score that it's just like, oh, that's that. So that's why I'm grading that on more of a curve as well.
One other thing I want to mention on the defense before we move on. Deonte Banks appeared to give up on a play, let Jalen Hurts run right past him for another 8 yards. It looked like I'm not really going to give him I want to give him a fart. I guess he gets an honorable mention for that. One thing that I do think that is good about that is that he barely even made it to the sideline before Jerome Henderson ripped him apart. Brian Dable said that they handled it internally. I think it's a tentative situation. He's a young player. They're losing bad. At that point, they're losing bad. They are now losing all year. It's important that you get his head in the game, but he's not a player you can bench, really. Just given the circumstances they have. And it would have to be an egregious give up. And I mean egregious give up to warrant benching him. I think it's more important you get his head right than to discipline him, I guess. You know what I mean? Discipline is probably the bad word. I mean ferociously discipline in terms of a benching or anything like that. I think it's more about getting the competitor's head back on his shoulders.
It's the problem when you have a bad team and you have no depth, is that these things don't get the proper, punishment that they deserve. And, right. and the proper sentence they deserve. A guy like him should have sat the rest of the game, and that's the end of it. I know you guys are sick of hearing me always talk about it, but, it happened in the Florida game a couple of years ago where Marco Wilson, who's now in the NFL, threw a shoe of a receiver because he was frustrated. And because nobody basically behind him wasn't benched. wasn't suspended by the team. And, you can't let that stuff happen, especially young players, because, as much as we want this coaching staff to succeed, you're teetering on the edge of having a losing culture. And when players see that, you don't discipline, they think it's okay. And we just have to be very careful. Deonte Banks is learning. He's still young, but it's the second year. He's been through this already.
Mm-hmm.
He's an NFL starter. He's not great. He's not a guy that, should get the benefit of the doubt for things like that. And
Nope.
he's at a crossroads. He's getting to be at a crossroads where we've had other cornerbacks in similar situations. Hopefully this is a freak moment of, frustration and we move on from it. But we're going to be watching him very closely to see if this is chronic.
I can forgive a lot of stuff on special teams when you have Matt Hack punting and whatever his name, Greg Joseph kicking. One thing I did note specifically about this game is that this is the first time I felt like consistently the punt and kick coverage was bad.
Yeah.
All around, the effort level sort of seemed to dip as the game went on. But right from the get-go, the punt and kick coverage did not seem very good in this game. So one thing of note, it's been a fairly rough special teams year, but this has absolutely nothing to do with the roster or guys being hurt. This is just bad special teams play in this game, or just being outcoached. I'm not a special teams expert. I'm not an expert on coverages and all kinds of plays. They did have the one blocked field goal. Maybe I'm forgetting that. That's a pretty big moment, but.
We just spent about 5 minutes talking about effort level, and that's going to be something that's going to really worry me going the rest of this year, because we're on the precipice of this season. And, if this coach loses this team, it can happen very, very quickly. The Joe Judge regime ended very, very quickly when it seemed like they lost his team. So we really have to pay attention and see, what happens, next Monday night in Pittsburgh and beyond. Because if we see more and more of this, compounded with an offense and a defense divided because one side isn't doing what they're holding up their end of the bargain, this can get ugly really, really fast.
Yeah, I don't want to see anyone eating boogers on the sideline against the Steelers either. But you brought us right to where I want to end this episode, is with a hypothetical question, because
Go ahead.
I spent my time last night thinking about this game with, just everybody's feelings seems to be, a lot of Shane and Dable, like, are they a way out? What are your thoughts on Shane and Dable? And, that conversation's been going on, but it's been getting louder and louder. I think it's been the loudest it's been after the game yesterday. So I was thinking about it. Let's pretend we're going to pretend that Cranky Fan here, you are both the GM and head coach. You are both Joe Shane and Brian Dable right now, because you need to be lockstep anyway. I am John Mara, and I am telling you that even though the season is over now, we're going to pretend it's the end of the season, and I am going to give you one last shot as GM and head coach duo. This is your last season. Show me you've turned it around. I mean, seriously, show me. You are picking at 5 overall in the draft, which means that you are out of reach of a good QB. Your offseason needs, and this is hypothetical, so don't get too in the weeds with everything I say here. But your offseason needs are a quarterback. Daniel Jones stinks. Offensive tackle. Andrew Thomas is hurt all the time, and you desperately need depth anyway. Right guard. Greg Van Roten isn't very good, and he came here on a 1-year deal very late, so he will not be back. Center. You have no backup to John Michael Schmitz, and he also hasn't been playing very well. Wide receiver. Darius Slayton is gone, and Jalen Hyatt apparently stinks and also cracked his rib. So you need somebody to play on the outside. Defensive tackle. This was a need going into this year. You desperately need someone to play alongside Dexter Lawrence and also be able to hold up the line when Dexter Lawrence gets his deserved breathers. Cornerback. You need another cornerback to play across from Deonte Banks, and you need another safety, because Jason Pinnock and Tyler Nubin cannot be the only two safeties, and Dane Belton isn't very good. So those are the needs that I am going to give you right now. We can argue about everything else, but I don't want to. So you're drafting at 5. Your good quarterback is out of reach. Here are your two scenarios. Do you A, trade up and get one, or B, trade back and build this team to hit all of those needs? Now, in scenario A, I'm going to say that you are trading up and you're giving up this year's number 1 pick to move up, and you're going to lose next year's number 1 pick, and you're going to lose this year's number 2 pick, round 2 pick. But you will be only getting your second favorite QB. Let's say you can only move up to 2, or maybe you move up to 3, but only 2 quarterbacks go in the top 3. So you're not getting your preferred quarterback, but you're getting one that you can play with. He is good enough that you can cut DJ and just play him and save yourself some money in free agency, which you will need because you are going to be left with only one more premium draft pick, and that is a 3rd rounder and free agency in order to address all those other holes. And I'm also going to dictate to you that in this scenario, your 3rd round pick is a potential depth swing tackle. So you get a quarterback and a swing tackle, and that's it. Everything else is free agency to address as you see please, which is not going to be everything, but it should be. You should be able to make a couple of moves that you can, maybe put a product on the field. Now, scenario B is you trade back twice in the 1st round. You land in the 20s, and in the 1st round, you get a defensive tackle that could start next to Dexter Lawrence and put a real tandem right there. In the 2nd round, with one of your picks, you get a wide receiver 3 to start on the outside opposite Malik Neighbors. Another 2nd round you pick that you get from that trade in the 1st round, you get an offensive tackle that probably could start on most teams. He's going to be your depth swing tackle at least for year 1. In the 3rd round, you're going to get a right guard that could potentially start. And with another 3rd round you pick that you get from trading down, you get a slot wide receiver to spell Wan'Dale Robinson or add another element to your offense or whatever. Now you have free agency to address the rest. You could roll with DJ if you want. You can also cut him and try and get a quarterback, but you also have to worry about center, corner, and safety with free agency. But otherwise, you've pretty much handled all of those needs that I counted on all those fingers at the beginning. Are you going scenario A and trading up for a quarterback, or are you going scenario B and trading back and quote unquote completing the foundation of a good team? It's your last shot. Cranky Fan, your thoughts?
I was told there'd be no math on this show. That was a lot. Well, the first thing what I would do is I would, in my conversations with Mara before we even get there, is to say, I cannot do my job with a 1-year ultimatum. This is not a 1-year fix. This is not we're in the middle of doing something here. You've seen the product on the field. I can't wave my magic wand in 1 year be where we all need to be. So I can't make short-sighted moves. And you don't want a general manager making short-sighted moves just so I'm passing some sort of metric to say I can keep my job for another year. And if you want to fire me for that, go ahead. So let's assume Mara says, all right, we're not going to worry about don't GM, don't coach this team as if you're on a 1-year probationary period. Do your thing, right? That's important, I think. The second thing is, why do we need to get our quarterback next year? That's a lot of people are doing that kind of, well, do you trade up for the quarterback or do you keep Daniel Jones? Our quarterback may be there in 2026. And I think the most important thing is we need to get a lot of assets. So I'm kind of going towards option B, but that doesn't mean I'm necessarily keeping Daniel Jones. That cap money really, to me, is the key to all of this. I can get by with a replacement level quarterback for a year. And I know this is a heretic talking, but someone like a Jameis Winston, someone who can snap the ball and not be Jake Fromm, not be Drew Lock, someone that, because this team's not going to the playoffs most likely next year anyway, but someone who's just not going to, be a complete negative and completely, be what we are for an offense this year. It's okay to wait a year to get some more ducks in your row so you have a quarterback that, you're not thrown to the wolves because the offensive line isn't ready. He doesn't have weapons to go to, a defense that has to be perfect for him. So I am under the mindset you can table the quarterback until you get your guy. If your guy is not the second quarterback available, don't take a quarterback just to get a quarterback. If he's not your guy, he's useless. We talk about the synergy between the GM and the coach. You need synergy with your quarterback and your coach. And if you're just picking someone just to pick someone, that's not really doing anybody any good. So I think, it's not a clear-cut A or B for me. It's, what's available. If it's not available, I'm more likely to choose the B. Watch this team, folks. A lot of holes. As soon as Dexter Lawrence leaves the field, Saquon Barkley has a party. As soon as Andrew Thomas leaves the field, there's a sack party going on. Daniel Jones was sacked 8 times. As soon as cornerback 1 is not guarding A.J. Brown on a 4th down, A.J. Brown is having an explosive play touchdown. There are a lot of holes besides just the quarterback. I try to fill those holes, and I don't have to go for the touchdown quarterback immediately. I wait till I get the right guy. I don't mind placeholding, but that placeholder cannot be Daniel Jones for no other reason that money.
I think it's a difficult question. I know a lot of people will probably be like, "Oh, it's so easy because it's A or it's B." I don't think it's an easy question. To speak to your point on not being able to do something under the cloud of a 1-year deal, that's a line pulled almost right out of Moneyball. But
was it really?
There's a conversation between Philip Seymour Hoffman and Brad Pitt where he says that he can't do it. That's like the source of their whole rift.
Oh, that was the thing about the 1-year contracts. Yeah. The shadow of it. Yeah.
I think, first of all, it's a two-part answer, two-part comment on that. The first is that they kind of screwed the pooch, in my opinion. They've had 3 years now, and I know everybody always says that, and it's a fair point. But the second year, they screwed up. I mean, they came in year 1 and nobody was safe, and everyone's getting a full evaluation, and that was the correct thing to do. And then they had a successful year that first year, and then the next thing they did is like, we're ready to win, and they went out and they traded for Darren Waller, and they did all this stuff, and they ignored the offensive line, kind of, sort of. No, they did.
They drafted Andrew Thomas, didn't they? Oh, not Andrew Thomas. They drafted Evan Neal in that draft, right?
No, it was the year before. That was the first year.
Then it was John Michael Schmitz.
Yeah, they drafted John Michael Schmitz.
Yeah, so they addressed it for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, they didn't address the fact that right tackle was still a mess. They were still counting on Evan Neal without getting any depth behind him. They didn't address the other interior positions. They were still relying on.
They were addressing. They didn't address. They were addressing. Yeah.
But they made all the moves of a team that was riding on a high and not continuing to build the way. They did not have the same mindset in year 2 that they had year 1. Now, to their credit, and I pointed this out multiple times on the show, I think that they have looked back hard at their failures last year going into this year, and they've addressed them. They've got a new offensive line coach that I believe in. They grabbed veterans for the offensive line, and they got them to gel very quickly. And, the protection is leaps and bounds better than things we've seen in years. They've changed the way they handled the offseason for the most part. They still rotated guys around on the offensive line, but other than that, they pushed them harder. They didn't have short practices. They are pushing for explosive plays. I think they've done stuff, but at that point, I think you are out of demands to say I cannot make decisions based on a 1-year guarantee. I think if I'm John Mara and you said it to me, I'm like, well, this isn't 1 year. This is year 4. Everything that you're dealing with at this point that got you to here is kind of on you. The Daniel Jones contract is you. Saquon Barkley not being here is you. Jalen Hyatt being wide receiver 3 is you. These are you situations, not necessarily problems, but where we are now is because of you guys. You cannot blame.
But that's all sunk cost, though. That none of those decisions previously made can impact what you're doing going forward.
But so point 2 on that is that I think all the time in sports, GMs are making decisions based on their job. And even at the very beginning of their job, they're like, I have to give results. It's a results business. And we say it all the time, and it's true. And we there are other regimes that have a very short leash, and they fire people left and right. And we see that doesn't actually help anything. But nevertheless, it happens. And, everyone has a leash. And it would be nice to get hired and be like, I'm guaranteeing you 4 years, and after that we'll discuss. But I just don't think that's reality. And especially John Mara, he takes silly things to heart. He takes the booing and Saquon Barkley beating him way harder than I think he should, because those are not football decisions. Those are, they're sort of owner decisions, right? So everyone in this business, I think, is making decisions to save their own jobs on some level. And they are making their non-preferred decision. I think in the back of their minds, if they were to be honest with you and try and defend a decision that they made here or there that was questionable, their answer would probably be, well, look, if I knew for sure that I would be here for 4 years, I would have done something else, but I don't know that, and I have to operate so that I will be here in 4 years. So, you know what I mean? So I think that's part of it. I don't think it's an easy question. I think that you can make very good decisions and explanations for picking scenario A or scenario B. And for everybody who had to listen to this, rewind and go through the question again, because it's quite lengthy. But I texted this to Cranky last night in a very long thing, so he was prepared for this. But I think for me, it's scenario A. And I think it's because it's what saves you your job. Brian Daboll saying that they need to create explosive plays. We discussed how that's blaming DJ without saying DJ's name. You have Malik Neighbors. You have Jalen Hyatt, supposedly. But it certainly sucks, but you can find... I think everyone gets better at their job when you have a quarterback that can do things. And I think Washington is the most obvious example. When you have Jaden Daniels, I think, I'll maintain this. I think he's going to get figured out and shut down later on in the year. But for right now, a bad offensive line looks good enough because he can move around and he keeps his eyes downfield, and defenses honestly are playing back because he can flick the ball very far downfield, and he'll do it. So they are not able to just throw everything at him without fear of getting punished. They traded away Jahan Dotson. So it's not like they have... Well, it's like, oh, of course, they have all this weapons. Like, they have some weapons, you know what I mean? Like, Terry McLaurin's certainly pretty scary. De'Ami Brown is okay. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't a super scary Washington offense. The reason the Washington offense is moving is because they have somebody that creates explosive plays at the quarterback position. And, you make a really good point about, and I certainly say this all the time, about getting a quarterback just to get a quarterback. I'm not trying to paint that scenario. And now I intentionally didn't name actual college players, and I used positions, which is something I never do. But the reason is because it's October 21st while we're recording this. So, you can say, well, there's no wide receivers in this draft, or I don't like the quarterbacks in this draft. But the reality is we don't know who's going to declare. We don't know who's going to get injured. We don't know who's going to get arrested. We don't know anything. So I didn't want to make it hyper specific like that. I just wanted to frame it like this. You have Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May as 3 quarterbacks. You don't get Caleb Williams. He's your preferred guy. He's the guy who makes the magic stuff happen. Jaden Daniels can do all that. He's got a lot of potential, but he's got warts like any rookie quarterback would. So that's kind of what I wanted to... When I say your second favorite, I don't mean a guy that's like, well, he's a franchise quarterback. He's Peyton Manning. He's Trevor Lawrence. He's the obvious one. What I'm saying is you don't get the obvious one. You have to pick the second one, who is someone that you can absolutely roll with day one, but you are fully expecting some rookie issues. So I'm not trying to paint the scenario where you're getting a quarterback just to get a quarterback, simply that you're not getting the franchise guy. Because let's be honest, I don't think that we're in play for that. I know it's very early to say that, but I don't think we're in play for that.
Well, also, a lot of the decisions that are made, and maybe by a guy like Mayer, is what is the temperature in the room and the temperature in the city. And, does drafting a quarterback, is the temperature too high in the city now that there's no patience for a rookie quarterback to, go through the warts next year? Is this fan base going to be like, oh, that's okay, quarterback X, whoever that is, we understand. We're going to live through this now. We're good. Or have we reached a point of critical mass with this fan base where the heat is on so much that it doesn't matter anymore? Because I think Mayer is a guy who does, like, he reads letters that the fans get. We know that for a fact. He does care what the fans think. He does, read the newspapers. He does watch NFL Network. He does, he's thin or thick skin, but he is aware of it too.
So my two-part answer is I think that the fan base would fully embrace a new quarterback if it were the day after Daniel Jones was drafted. So I don't think that there would. I think there would be a longer leash for that quarterback. So long as he. Yeah, I don't think that would be an issue. And then the second part of that is, I love that John Mara actually reads letters. I love that he cares that his fans are passionate. He wants to know what they think. Mm-hmm. But he has to understand that these are the same fans that wanted everyone within the Yankees organization fired like 12 weeks ago, and now they're in the World Series.
For the last 5 years.
I know that, but what I'm saying is, as recently as like 12 weeks ago, they were ready to fire Cashman and everyone else. And I'm sure some of them would be like, yeah, I do want Cashman gone. And I'm not trying to make this a baseball thing. I'm not trying to make this a Yankees thing. I'm trying to say that there are very few franchises that have what I would consider a smart, loud fan base. And I certainly don't think that the New York Giants have a smart, loud fan base. They have a very dumb, very fan, like W fan type of crowd, and they are going to, and they're going to scream and yell about 30 things, and they're going to be right about 3 of them. Doesn't mean that they're right about everything and that you should listen to them. I'm not saying John Mara has made great decisions. I'm not saying Dave Gettleman, Joe Shane, Brian Dable, Joe Judge. All of these people have different reasons they should be fired or not listened to, but the New York Giants fan, we hear these idiots around us every week. You know what I mean? There are people with very, very, they just want to see wins, and they're desperate for them. And I feel for them. They don't want to spend their hard-earned money to watch the bullshit that they watch week after week, year after year at this point. But that only breeds more impatience and silly opinions and overreaction kind of opinions. So I could kind of give a shit about the temperature. The temperature changes very quickly when you make the right decision, and they may not notice it's the right decision until they see the product on the field. So,
yeah,
I'm leaning A because I think that it's an injection of hope. It's kind of the feeling I had about trading up in this past year's draft. I knew it wasn't likely of a scenario, but I knew that Malik Neighbors is probably the correct draft pick, but there is that sinking feeling in your stomach like, well, we're still kind of stuck with the big elephant in the room, and that's Daniel Jones, and what's he going to do, and his injury concerns and his limitations. And, I was excited for Malik Neighbors, but I got to tell you, my outlook and my excitement level would have been extended beyond the 2024 season if we traded up and got a Drake May or whatever,
Yeah, see, I always had in the back of my mind that next year was the end of it for Daniel Jones regardless. If we did not get the guy this year, he's going to be gone next year. Just the way the contract was, I knew that we had that out. So the hope thing for me wasn't like, again, it's now or never. No, that's not the case. We can start over next year and do it the right way. We don't have to be forced to do that. So, yeah, a coach, a general manager can offer you one of 2 things: wins or hope. And if you can't give me wins, you give me hope. And as soon as, like in this situation now, this may be some of their last chance to provide hope. And as soon as that hope is gone, you're done. So I still think there's hope for this. I mean, because why do I have hope in this general manager? I think this draft class has been pretty decent so far. I think you're seeing a lot of things that, again, we have to look for stuff in the crevices because this is a bad team. But, Malik Neighbors is a franchise guy.
Tyler Newton's still learning, but Drew Phillips has been excellent. You're making a good point.
Theo Johnson, we're talking about force feeding, but if you're force feeding, that means you see something in him that's halfway decent. I don't want to hear, well, the drafting's been awful. Well, this year's not been awful so far. Small sample size, but encouraging. Mm-hmm. So,
Tyrone Tracy, right?
I will go to my grave thinking it was still the right move to re-sign Daniel Jones at the time. They made the right move the way they structured the contract. They didn't pull a Deshaun Watson and gave him guaranteed money for the next 5 years. They put it in a way that, it gave them an out. And, a lot of GMs don't do that. So I am still riding with both of these guys. The thought of launching both right now has not entered my head. I'm not ready to have that conversation and evaluation yet. I think you still have to keep doing your thing. And we'll see what happens. We'll evaluate at the end of the season. We'll evaluate after next year. But, fan bases are mobs. And mobs never think rationally, never think big picture. They want instant gratification. And you just have to ignore them.
But I want to know what you guys think. I think that it's a really interesting question. So leave in the comments below or whatever. Message us or reply on Twitter with your thoughts on the situation. I am genuinely curious. I will not mock you or anything like that. I mean, certainly you can mock me for mine or Cranky for his. But, I asked a variety of people this question, and I got all kinds of different answers all across the map. So I haven't made fun of a single one of them. So I think it's a genuinely interesting conversation. I think that's kind of the direction we're heading. So be sure to
let's throw it up as a Twitter poll. Can't we do that?
Yeah, I might. If I can get it to be short enough, I'll try and
shorter than that. Shorter than your initial thing. Jeez.
Well, I wanted to. Yeah. I was very specific, but I wanted to paint the illustration of how much you could get done by trading down twice in the first round, and how much would be left on the table by getting your quarterback of the future. So I wrote it out just so that it was very clear, and it was originally a text message. So, but yeah, if I can get the clip short enough, I'll put the clip of that question on Twitter, and I would like that. But otherwise, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell a friend about the episode, about the show, on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And if you guys don't know our Twitter handles by now, it's at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, at Just Giants Pod. And I am anxious to see what you guys come up with. And we will see you all on Friday morning for Giants versus Steelers for a Monday night game. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.